thank you. It's obviously very difficult kind of circumstances to be talking like this, and I think there are some issues that probably are not, don't seem to be at the heart of what we should be talking about that I want to raise. But Joe mentioned in his statement from the Grenfell survivors group that corruption was one of the primary concerns, and I don't think we should take that lightly. I think we have to take it very, very seriously, because at the heart of the structure of the economy that allows us to understand, and I would argue produced that tragedy, is a level of corruption which has now become kind of normalised and etched into the system. And I want to try and just explain a few examples of that, because I think we have to take this very seriously indeed. There's a very chilling title to a book that I know and has kind of influenced my thinking, by a woman called Jane Kelsey, called The Fire Economy. And in The Fire Economy, she uses FIRE as an acronym, F-I-R-E, finance, insurance and real estate. And she says the logics, the ways in which finance think about how we should be as a society, and the things that they do, their practices, the ways that they act in the finance industry, in the insurance industry, in the real estate industry, is dominating our lives, and it is oppressing us, and it's creating all kinds of forms of corruption. Because what and we live in an economy now where actually, when she says insurance, she means also the kind of securities, all of those products that are supposed to insure us against risk, those derivative products that fueled the financial crisis. So within that kind of logic, the idea is that you create value, and you try and create value out of nothing, no matter what the human cost is. And the best example for me is the way in which subcontracting works. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment. But there were 5 layers of subcontracting. There's 5 layers of subcontracting in the renovation of Grenfell in 2016. That's absolutely crucial to how we understand that, because at every layer of that subcontracting, costs were being forced down, actually labour costs very often, and value was being created for the people who were working on those contracts. And that's the same logic that's etched into our financial system, and it creates all kinds of collusive relationships. And I'm going to name just a few. There was a very good piece actually by I've forgotten her name, the Guardian journalist, Anna Minton, yeah, who detailed the leader and the deputy leader of the councils that again Joe mentioned, and their intimate relationships with property companies, their intimate relationships with development companies, and the number of times over the last year they've been wined and dined by the same companies that were trying to exploit opportunities like Grenfell Towers for profit. And that seems to be acceptable in the way that we run politics. If you go to the heart of government right now and think about the kinds of things that should have been done to protect the people at Grenfell, they're being determined in this revolving door relationship. So there's a couple of important regulatory authorities that are crucial for advising government and maintaining regulatory standards in building. The first one is called the Building Regulations Advisory Committee. And the Building Regulations Advisory Committee directly advises the Minister with responsibility, Javid, on building in terms of the regulatory standards that it should apply. It's almost exclusively staffed by people who are making money out of the industry. There's no trade union representatives, there's no residents representatives on that body. And in fact, one of the people who's on that body is a guy called Mark Allen, who's the technical director of St. Gobain. Now, they're the company that manufactured the materials that the Metropolitan Police right now is testing, because it was the material that's supposed to be part of the flammable material in the cladding. He's advising the government on regulatory standards. If you look at another key body, and in fact it's a good example of what my colleague here, Steve, talks about as privatised regulation. BRE Global has a 3-year contract. It's an autonomous organisation. It's made up again of It's comprised by industry representatives, and it has a 3-year contract from the government to investigate issues that may have implications for building regulations. I'll tell you one thing BRE Global has said as recently as April 2016. It found the safety regulations in Britain on cladding adequate. I'll just leave that there. BRE Global said that. Now, the task force that Javid has just set up, the independent expert advisory panel on the cladding, has half of the representatives of BRE Global as, on this panel. That's not a revolving door. They're all sitting in the same room, deciding the regulations are adequate, and then being appointed to actually test the adequacy of the regulations. Now, it's very difficult to call that collusion because, of course, it's legal. In the laws that we have, this is entirely legal. Well, it may be legal, but it's very clearly a form of collusive corruption that we shouldn't be tolerating in this. We see it in the PFI economy. It's incredible the way in which the PFI economy has made some companies bloated and has ensured that actually there is a culture of impunity which is developing around those huge public building projects. Grenfell Tower renovation wasn't a PFI, but the company that ran it grew fat off PFI. Ryden grew fat off, some of you will know the contract in Chalcots, which now they had to evacuate tenants there. Same contractor, Ryden involved in all kinds of PFI deals. And the point about those PFI deals is it brings contractors into a role that we would never have dreamt of giving them before, because they are given multiple roles in organising multiple tasks, which they then subcontract out, which they then don't have responsibility for, or claim they don't because they're subcontracted out. One of the points of subcontracting is to devolve not only responsibility, but accountability and make sure there's impunity in the system. It's the point that there is a Kensington and Chelsea tenants management organisation running the building, because that organisation gives the people involved in it limited liability. They're not liable for any losses. And when tenants have to complain, they can't go direct to the council, they have to go to the tenant management organisation at every level in the system. And when it comes to the renovations, through the supply and the subcontracting chain, there is a level of impunity being built into that where we're never quite sure who's accountable for what. And these kind of structures of impunity are there to stimulate the economy. They're there, we're told, because if we have too much regulation, we stifle innovation or we stifle enterprise. I'm not going to say much about that because I know there are other speakers on the panel who are going to talk about in more detail this so-called bonfire of red tape, which was there. But I do want to say that there are some fundamental questions that we have to ask about the financialization logic or the financial capitalism logic of regulation. Because as we know, look, Kensington and Chelsea is a relatively wealthy council. It might be the second wealthiest in the country. It had the money to regulate. It chose not to do so. Now, it's very difficult to get the information right now, so this is speculative. But I know that the building inspectors in Kensington and Chelsea, the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, in the last 2 years have had 2 campaigns on regulation. One has been about the aesthetics of buildings, and they've prosecuted builders who put advertising on the side of buildings because it spoils the look of the buildings, right? The other thing that they've prosecuted over is noise. Now, I'm not saying either of those are important. In fact, they launched a campaign in April 2016 around noise. It's the main campaign around what's happening in terms of so-called regeneration in the area. And people have been prosecuted for noise, right? I think there is a priority here. At least we have to ask questions about how particular forms of regulation, which tie in with and support the gentrification of the area, are at the same time allowing the essential human protection, social protection forms of regulation that ensure the integrity of buildings, the safety of buildings, not to be observed. It's part of an austerity economy as well, without a doubt. I'm not denying that. The fire service, I'm sure we'll hear from about this later, but the fire service have been cut back by at least a quarter in the last 5 years. We've seen reports of the reduction of inspections of tower blocks, fire audits of tower blocks, the Financial Times report, 28% falling. So, we have a structure of regulation which is dominated by those financial logics which relegate human protection, social protection to those logics. And I'm going to leave you with two examples that I still find actually unbelievable. I can't believe that this is that these things have kind of reached the surface and not been questioned. Within 6 days of the disaster, Ryden, it was announced in the construction press that Ryden, the same contractor, was going to be given a £38 million contract by Ealing. It wasn't even questioned. There was a speculation. It looks like they're going to get the contract. 2 days later, it was announced they were going to get the contract. So, we don't even think about freezing the contracts on the contractors that have been implicated, and I'm careful about what I say, but Ryden are the prime suspects in the police's current investigation now, and it's still being doled out with getting public sector contracts doled out without question. A second point, which I kind of find unbelievable, that Sajid Javid, again the minister that I noted, who's been given the prime responsibility for responding to this, he issued a statement in an interview 2 days ago where he said all local authorities will have to take all measures necessary to deal with the problems around the country they find with fire safety. He knows. He's the head of a government that's cut local authorities by 40%. Local authorities are in a crisis point now, and the government are turning around and telling them to take the money out of the pockets. And by the way, we're talking about the local authorities that are least able to pay are not in the same position as Kensington and Chelsea. So we have a financialised logic that remains in the system that I think we really together have to challenge in order to open up some fundamental questions about how we run our economy and how that economy can lead to something like the catastrophe at Grenfell Tower.